So I've officially opened Pandora's kit bag and have become obsessed with the idea of adapting vintage lenses for modern video. Primarily, I've been trying out M42 and Canon FD lenses on the Micro Four Thirds mount of the original Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, primarily because it's a really easy adaptation and it just oozes quality. But despite falling in love with this idea, I have come across a few issues. Primary of those is the lack of image stabilization. So clearly it was time to call in help, not with the addiction, but with the image stabilization issue. First, as with any issue, I consulted the Oracle. Yeah, Google, but you know, can't blame me for trying. And after drawing a blank there was only one other place left to turn, and that was to the Vintage Lens King.
Alright, this is the Vintage Lens King getting 30 seconds of room tone before the video. Oh yeah. Hey man. Oh, calm down, calm down. What's the problem?
My vintage lenses, they're wibbly wobbly. I need ideas, hit me.
Why don't you just use a tripod?
No, too uncool. Cramps my style. Next idea?
Well, here's something crazy. Have you ever thought about using a different Micro Four Thirds camera?
Different camera. Not an option, Mark. Not an option. Thanks for nothing.
Hello? AJ? Watermelon? Hello? You hung up on me. Rude. Room tone, back to room tone. Have you ever thought about using a different Micro Four Thirds camera? Different camera. Different camera. A different camera. Different camera. Different camera. Different camera. Have you ever thought about using a different Micro Four Thirds camera? A different camera. Different camera. Different camera.
Got it. Use a different camera. I'm a genius. In a recent video, we were lucky enough to have the opportunity to test out the EM-1 Mark III, the latest miniaturized Micro Four Thirds camera to come from Olympus, and this camera packed a huge amount of quality and versatility into a small body for the average video shooter. What really stood out for me when using this camera was how good its 7.5 stops of image stabilization were. So in the time I have remaining with the EM-1 Mark III, I wanted to really test out that feature with some of these vintage lenses and to see if this camera could be the best Micro Four Thirds option for vintage lens video shooters. I mean, yeah, it would be obvious to say the Panasonic GH5 is the best, but I don't have one, Panasonic won't send me one, so, you know, we're stuck with this. Live with it. For all these test shots that you'll see throughout this whole video, I'm using the infamously swirly Helios 44M 58mm f2. So first of all, it's worth noting the crop factor. It is always an issue for Micro Four Thirds mounted cameras, and in truth, the 58mm should be a hard lens to handle on this mount without a speed booster. However, there is one thing I have found with using the EM-1 Mark III and this cropped in lens. The image stabilization does make handling this larger focal length a lot easier. The normal shake and micro jitters just weren't as much of an issue. So if you can live with a cropped focal range, You don't have to deal with the optical compromise of using a speed booster. The next thing that I really loved about this camera and lens combination is being able to breathe cinema 4K life into a Helios 44M. It is a remarkable and famous lens that has a well-documented aesthetic. For sure, it is far from perfect, and when you start to use it in a 4K world, its flaws do become a lot clearer. For certain, the general lack of contrast and duller colours that you get with this lens is an issue, and it will be an issue for a lot of people, but for me, it was all part of the character and charm that I'm looking for when shooting video with a vintage lens. The final great thing to note is the general feel of using this modern camera with a vintage lens. The combination is really ergonomic, it feels very real and organic, and it's just generally a very nice filming experience. And for me, this is a huge part of the attraction for these old bits of glass. Getting that organic, tangible feel into your filmmaking with a handheld and manual focus. There's something beautifully addictive about the process, and the EM-1 Mark III's body really complements this. It feels great in hand, really well balanced and secured with that hand grip. In many ways, I prefer the feel of this camera with this vintage lens than with the 20 to 45mm Pro that Olympus shipped it with. All of these great features though don't come without caveats. Of course, there's always a compromise to be had, and that compromise comes in regards to taking advantage of the great image stabilization for handheld shooting, the whole thing that I wanted to use this camera for in the first place. When you do use it to its fullest, there is a noticeable stutter to the footage. If you make any lateral or vertical movements too suddenly, the image stabilization struggles to smoothly compensate and creates a slightly stuttered look, almost like when a gimbal moves in its axis. It is not the end of the world once you know it's present, but is definitely an issue worth noting. So in summary, the EM-1 Mark III certainly makes for a fantastic video companion to your vintage lenses. In the context of the Micro Four Third mounted cameras, it could be one of the best. But until Panasonic sent me the GH5, I can't be completely conclusive about that. What I can say though is that this camera goes a long way to solving my image stabilization issues when using vintage glass. Thanks, Mark. For some more information on this camera and lens combination, there is some links below. And whilst you're down there, why not consider subscribing to our channel? That's been my grab and go review, vintage/modern style. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.